Okay, hello. We should be live here. I'm gonna do the nice pre-stream check. I'll pull up. I'm joined here today. Well, I guess I'll introduce myself and then do a pre-stream check that we can always cut. I'm Cassidy with Endless Access. I'm here joined by Will. And how about I actually show you on the screen? That'd be good. There we go. There's Will. And we're gonna take a look at Threadbare on Steam Deck. I keep saying Stream Deck because we're streaming, but it's Steam Deck. Stream Deck's a different thing. We're going to take a look at Threadbare on Steam Deck and also just explore sort of some Godot exporting stuff that goes along with that and running on Linux, stuff like that. Before we get too far in, I'm going to pull up the stream on my phone to make sure we have audio and all that fun stuff because...
Well, maybe I should probably have talked a bit more than just saying hi, because then you would be...
That's fair. Here, we're going to do this. Okay, I see our faces, so that's good.
It's a good start.
And I hear myself, so that's good. Do I hear the music? It's real quiet, I think, but that's fine.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure you talk. Here we go. Yep, you're in there too. I'll tweak volume levels, but we're perfect. Yeah, that's the very professional way of doing audio checking live. It's good.
Yeah, this is like when you sound check live on stage at the start of the gig, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you've got a big budget gig situation, you have like sound checks earlier in the day. But like sometimes you just turn up and play half the song.
Right. Well, that's why I enjoy. That's why I enjoy like informal streams like this too, is because it's like we're just people, we're just here, we're just showing you a thing. So, but yeah, I'll pull out my notes. But it sounds like let's get going on showing some Steam Deck stuff. So I'll let you kind of lead, and then I'll monitor the chat. If you have questions for Will or me in the chat, please shout out in the chat, and I'll monitor that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll let you kind of lead.
All right, let's go. So Threadbare is this game we're working on at Endless Access. Backing up a bit. I'm Will. I'm an engineer on the games team at Endless Access. Greetings from London. So Threadbare is a game we're working on at Endless Access. It's a top-down RPG kind of in the style of sort of faintly kind of old-school Zelda adjacent, I guess. We're building it in Godot, which is this very cool open source engine. The game is open source. Many contributions are welcome in many different forms. Several of us in the team also have a Steam Deck. So a Steam Deck is this. It's actually basically a laptop in a weird shaped box. It looks a little bit like if the Nintendo Switch was too big, but it's basically a weird Linux laptop in a strange box. And occasionally, the thought crosses one's mind: can we play Threadbare on a Steam Deck? So right now, Threadbare is not really published anywhere. It is published in the sense that we have a GitHub page, which has all the source code. We develop it in the open, but it isn't published to any storefronts such as Steam. So first of all, I'll just here is on my Linux PC. I can just give the game a quick spin. We have our title screen, and if we launch into the game, some stuff will happen. We have some dialogue, and off camera I've got my keyboard, which is what I'm using to control the game. If I had a gamepad connected to my PC, which I don't, I could be controlling it with the gamepad instead. And I can talk to this individual, and he's going to ask me if I want to go on an adventure, and the only adventure is this musician's quest. So I guess I'll choose that one. I'll play it. The elder believes in us. He's only just met us, but he still believes in us. Yeah, and so then we have a puzzle, which you have to solve a kind of sequence musical something puzzle by talking to this individual. But I'll leave it for now. We can see a bit more of this later. So we have web builds of this. So if you go to our GitHub repo, there's a link which is at github.com/ndsm-threadbare, link in the description presumably. You can click this link and you get a web version, which is pretty nice. So that is I think the main way people are playtesting this at the moment. The web build has some downsides. It does kind of work. But the Steam Deck is a Linux laptop, basically. So surely we should be able to run the Linux build of this game on the Steam Deck. So if you're in Godot, you have this section of the project settings, which is export, and this controls the different platforms that you target with your game. So we have a couple of presets configured at the moment. We have a web preset. So if we export this one, then we're going to get a web page, a static web page, which we can upload somewhere. Or we've also got a Linux export configured, and if we export this, then we will get a program, and we will get the data file for Godot, and we get a launcher script. Data file for Threadbare and a launcher script, and then you can run the game. And so, in principle, I can hit this button, and it will spit out some files, and then I can laboriously copy those files onto my Steam Deck, and then I can run them by opening a terminal window, and I haven't got a keyboard, so I have to use the on-screen keyboard. Sounds pretty miserable, right? So maybe we can do better, and we can. So Cassidy, our gracious host today, some time ago has set up a nice continuous integration pipeline. The details are not super important, but we have what's called a desktop file, which is how you make a desktop or menu icon on Linux systems, which runs the game, and we have some information for how it would appear in an app store. And then we have this thing, which is a Flatpak manifest. So Flatpak is a system for bundling and publishing apps on Linux. Maybe the most famous incarnation of it is FlatHub, which is sort of the de facto standard single app store backend for Flatpak. If you have ever used your Steam Deck in desktop mode, you have used Flatpak if you've installed any apps, because the Discover App Store app is using FlatHub as its source of apps. So maybe we can simply publish Threadbare to FlatHub. Unfortunately, we can't, because FlatHub doesn't accept unfinished software. It's not supposed to be a place where you put your pre-releases, your demos, and so on. And while Threadbare is playable, we have a sort of single playable quest, which has a kind of campaign. It's definitely not finished, so we can't.
We're definitely calling it pre-alpha still, right? Like it's
We haven't even started on the Greek alphabet yet, so we're not yet.
I like that.
But Flatpak is not locked to everything coming from one store, and we have this pipeline, which every time we make a release of Threadbare, it builds a Flatpak version and bundles it up and attaches it on GitHub. So I have a keyboard here, which I'm going to use to operate the Steam Deck, which is why you're not going to see my hands too much as I play with the Steam Deck. And forgive me in advance, because it's actually quite hard to see the tiny screen. But we're going to switch to desktop mode. So if you have a Steam Deck, you may or may not know, Cassidy, if you're not already on the Steam Deck, now's the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you hit the Steam menu and you go to the power settings, there are surprisingly many options. And one of the options here is switch to desktop. So if I hit that, it's going to ask me to enter my PIN. Now I'm going to enter my PIN on an off-screen joypad, because I don't want to show people that.
Also, I switched away for you too.
Okay, well, I have the gamepad here to do that off screen.
Nice.
And so now we're at a desktop, and this is called Plasma by the KDE project. This is a different open source desktop for Linux than what I'm running on my laptop, but a lot of the underlying stuff is just the same.
Yeah, focus is focus on the camera is struggling a little bit, but yeah, you can at least make out it. It looks like a desktop. It's got like a taskbar at the bottom and icons on the desktop even.
Yeah, there's some icons on the desktop, and I'm right now I'm operating the mouse with. You can use the right touchpad or the joystick, and you click using the shoulder button. And this is foreshadowing something that's going to come later. So I'm going to open up Firefox, which is the default browser, at least in my version of SteamOS. And so this is the same version of Firefox that you would get on your desktop, and it comes from FlatHub. It's installed as a Flatpak. So now if I go to the Threadbare repository, then I can, just as we saw on the desktop, I can scroll down. I'm going to click on the latest release, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to grab the Flatpak. And good luck, it will download. So now I've downloaded this Flatpak bundle, and if I open the file, then this app called Discover will be open. So this is the App Store for this desktop. I'm going to delete the old settings because that's my old save games. So now I've got this App Store, which is called Discover, has popped up, and it's probably a little hard to read, but it's showing me the metadata that we saw a minute ago. There's an icon, which we provided, Threadbare by endless access, and it has a description of the game. And crucially, it has install from local bundle up here. So I'm going to click install from local bundle, and I have to authenticate with my password because I have set a password for reasons that will become clear later. Again, off-screen keyboard. I can't remember my password when I'm on screen, of course. But there we go. For some reason it asked for it twice. I don't know why. I don't think it should, but there we go. And time will pass.
So just to recap here, and to make sure that I'm following, I'm switching just back to our cameras real quick. But the so you went to the GitHub repo of Threadbare, downloaded the apologies. There's apparently an airplane flying right over my house. You downloaded the Flatpak bundle from the latest release.
Yes.
On the Steam Deck. You're just doing this all in desktop mode on the Steam Deck. And then you're using KDE Discover, which is like the App Store client on the Steam Deck's desktop mode, using that to install that Flatpak bundle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
perfect. Just making sure. I was pretty sure I was following, but I also wanted to like just double check that my sense.
Yep.
Cool.
That is all there is there. So while we were talking, it is finished. So there's now a launch button here. And if I look in the menu, which you can get to by clicking on the launcher in the bottom left-hand corner, then it should also show up somewhere under Games, which it does here. So I'm going to launch it from the Start menu equivalent. And if we played our cards right,
hey, look at that.
Threadbare is running on my Steam Deck, which is pretty nice. So now I'm going to try and play it, right? And you can operate it with a mouse, but the arrow keys, actually the arrow keys are working, but pressing A, it's working, okay. But it's not really the right size, right? And B, which is supposed to, the B button, which I'm pressing off screen, is supposed to skip ahead in the dialogue, and it's not working. The reason it's not working is that the Steam Deck defaults to emulating a mouse and keyboard in desktop mode. But if you long press the Start menu button, the thing with the 3 lines, the kind of hamburger menu, then you get a little popover which says that it's now running in gamepad mode. And so now, at least in theory,
can you try pulling the brightness? Can you try pulling the brightness down on the Steam Deck? Is that possible? Easy from here?
Let's find out. Well, I might have to skip this because that one has worked. That's strange. Let me just get through this. And there we go. That should work. That looks like brightness. Brightness down. Is that better?
Hey, that is better. Yeah. It was just it was overexposing the game. That's better.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. So now it's in gamepad mode. Why is the input not working? That's very strange. Yeah, this is why you should. This is why you should never demo things, kids, because it doesn't work. Very weird. It worked perfectly before. Well, I guess we have another bug to fix. Very interesting.
So what input isn't working on it?
Well, I can't use the shoulder button to run because these buttons are being used to emulate a keyboard. But if I enable the gamepad mode, the joysticks are not working. But it might be because I have a gamepad connected. So I'm going to now just pretend this hasn't happened. I'm going to switch to using my gamepad to control the game, so I don't have to crane over the laptop. It's not looking very good, but in options we have a full screen option. So let's enable full screen. And that looks a little bit better. That's a little bit better, and I can now run with my joypad and so on, and I can talk to the elder. Now what you can't see, probably because of the video quality, is the text is a little hard to read. We'll come back to that later. Anyway, I think we can convince ourselves that we're running Threadbare on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I'm going to go quit. So right now, what we've got is that you have to be in desktop mode to run Threadbare. But most people probably do not want to run their Steam Deck in desktop mode.
Right.
Right. If you switch to the desktop and you open Steam, confusingly, you can open Steam on your Steam Deck in desktop mode as a separate app. If I go to my
Steamception.
library, if I go to my library and I click in the bottom corner, add a game, then I can choose add a non-Steam game. And then this will show me all of the apps that are installed in desktop mode. And so if I search the list for Threadbare, you can see it's in the list. If you can just about see that. And so I'll tick that one to say yes, add this program. I guess that's done. So now I'm going to close all these things down and I'm going to switch back to the loving embrace of gaming mode, which you do by double-clicking return to game mode on the desktop. And having done that, some time will pass. The desktop session on the Steam Deck goes away. We get a snazzy login video. And here we are. If I go in the sidebar to library and go to non-Steam games, you can see Threadbare is listed, not without any artwork, which is something we can come to another time, here. And so if I launch Threadbare here, in theory, I'll run it, and here we go. So now, if you just want to have Threadbare on your Steam Deck in order to play it on the go or show it to your friends, which is more likely what I would use this for, I can launch it from game mode.
Nice.
I believe in game mode, the joystick emulation stuff should have no problems because there is no keyboard emulation. So I can play it with all the controls the way that the Steam Deck intended. You won't get updates as new versions come out because this is not.
Right.
This is just a standalone bundle, but you can always install a newer version over the version you have installed.
So this is like if you have a Steam Deck, and especially if you just wanted to try it out on the Steam Deck and play around with it, you could do this.
Yes.
But what we want to look at next is more like if you're developing on a Steam Deck, right? Like if you're actually wanting to test your changes and things on a Steam Deck.
Yeah, exactly. So this flow is pretty good if what you want to do is to have your controller fail while you're playing, which is always good. Okay, well, we'll figure something out. So it's a little hard to tell on the stream, I think, but the text is quite hard to read. And the reason the text is hard to read is that the game is rendering at a higher resolution than the Steam Deck is. So right now our game targets 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080 resolution. But the Steam Deck is roughly 720p. It's 1080 pixels across and 800 tall. So a little taller than 720p. And so what's happening is the game is drawing onto a virtual screen that's substantially bigger than the Steam Deck. And then everything is getting scaled down to fit on the screen. So the result is that you can't really read the text. And so it'd be nice to try and test this. And of course you can test it on your desktop by changing the screen size, the window size, but my desktop screen is substantially bigger than my Steam Deck screen. So even if the game is legible at 720 resolution, 1080 by 720 on my desktop, it may not be legible on the Steam Deck. So it'd be nice to be able to test my changes on the Steam Deck as we go.
And ironically, part of this is because we're doing like pixel art or a pixel font, right? Like I would imagine if you had like a fully rendered font, it might not be as important because it would like the shapes would be more consistent maybe, or more like legible when scaled up and down. But the fact that we're like it's a low pixel font scaled up, then scaled down, so then it's all not aligned with the pixel grid and it's all messy.
Yeah, and in fact, part of the problem is we've set the game to we've configured the project in Godot to scale pixel perfect. And then if you can't do pixel perfect, we've set it to not try to anti-alias the edges, but just to like either show or don't show a pixel, which means that the widths of the letters change. So yes, the fact that it's a pixel font and we've configured it to render in that style makes the effect worse.
I'm showing on my screen just for people to see like the full resolution of it. I'm just showing on my screen, talking to like an elder or whatever, so you can see what the text looks like. Imagine that now scaled way down. Like scaled down, not pixel aligned on a small Steam Deck screen. So that's what you'd be seeing.
Yes, I mean we can do the same thing here. If I go back to my stream at some point. So I've got this game running here, and in Godot's in the editor, when you're running in the editor, you can see the resolution that you're showing the game at. So I'm going to just resize this screen down to 1280 by 720. Let's go there. Actually, the Steam Deck is 800, so let's do it. Let's be honest. And then, okay, no, it's too wide now, so it has to be down at 1280. There we go. And so it may be a bit more obvious now that the text is kind of weird. Like you can see the D here and the R.
Yeah.
The ascenders are really narrow. The J here as well, but then some of them are wide. And it just depends how it's aligning to the pixel grid.
Yeah.
So not ideal. Okay, well, I'd like to fix this, but I'd first of all like a better flow that doesn't involve me having to repeatedly build a new Flatpak and send it to my Steam Deck and go to desktop mode and so on. I want to be able to hit a button in Godot and have the game appear on my Steam Deck. And it turns out you can do this, which I was very happy to find. In the project settings, under export for Linux, there's this pretty interesting section here, SSH remote deploy. So SSH is how you connect remotely from one Linux system to another. And the Steam Deck by default doesn't allow remote connections, which kind of makes sense because you don't expect people to be able to remotely log into your games console. But sometime in the past, I've enabled this. So that when I'm in desktop mode, I'm going to open a terminal window. When I'm in desktop mode, if I know the IP address of my Steam Deck, which I will know in a few moments, which I should have written down somewhere more easily accessible. There we go. That'll do it. So I happen to know that on my network, the Steam Deck is at this address. And the Steam Deck user is always deck. So if I SSH to that, now I'm remotely logged into my Steam Deck, which is pretty fun. The three things I had to set up to do this were I enabled the SSH server on my Steam Deck. You enable the systemd service. There are guides to doing this online, so I won't repeat it here. I then set a password on the Steam Deck because otherwise people can log in with no password, which you probably don't want. But then,
if they're on the local network, right? Like,
yeah. So like, if I'm on a train connected to the train Wi-Fi, and I really don't want my seat neighbor to be able to log into my Steam Deck.
Yeah.
So I've got a password so they can't. But then I don't want to type in a password each time I log into it. So I've copied my SSH public key to the Steam Deck. I've said that well, there's actually quite a long list of them, huh? But one of these many keys is my public key on this laptop. So this is effectively saying that this laptop that I'm talking to you from now is allowed to connect remotely to my Steam Deck without a password, but no other device can. So having done that, all we simply do is we enable SSH remote deploy. And what happens, of course, is that Godot crashes when you're trying to demo, which is great and just what I always wanted. Well, it's been very, very unstable today. Been having a bad day. Let's start it up again.
It's always the day when you're going to demo or live stream something. It's got them like shouldn't misbehave today.
Switch focus away while the tooltip is open.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Interesting. Okay.
I think that's the problem, but I won't try and reproduce it right now. So where was I? Oh yeah. So if I go to the project settings and go to export Linux, I'm going to enable SSH remote deploy. Then I'm going to go back over to my terminal window or my notes off screen, and I'm going to say my username is deck and my password is this. And now in theory, having done this, I can use this remote deploy menu and press run on remote Linux/BSD system. And I'm going to do this, and it's going to fail. Spoiler alert. With the default settings. So this is just exporting the project. So it's doing all the stuff that the Flatpak build is happening automatically somewhere in the sky. Is it's bundling up the project and turning it into one huge pack file. So it's saying here uploading archive, so that's pretty good. So it's now copying the game over my local network to my Steam Deck. And if you cut over to my Steam Deck, you will see that absolutely nothing has happened. The game has not in fact started. So I was very sad when I tested this because I was thinking this would be really fun to have working, and it doesn't
just
work.
like popped up and
yeah, nothing happens at all. And in the terminal window where I launched Godot from, we get a clue as to what's happening. It's saying the X11 display is not available. Which is to say that when I've connected over SSH, that session, that remote connection, doesn't have permission to show windows on the screen. I really don't want to spend too much time talking about this because it's very boring. But I found a workaround, which is that rather than running the game directly on the Steam Deck, trying to run it directly from the remote connection, what we can do is we can change this launcher script. So the launcher script, it's trying to say, okay, it's display 0, that's the X display to use, but that doesn't actually work. But what you can do is so this line here is running the game. And rather than running the game directly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to use a command called systemd run. And I'm going to give it a few arguments. So this is saying systemd is the service that controls what services or what kind of background and foreground processes are running on the Steam Deck. So on a Linux system. What this command is doing is it's saying, as the current user, run this command, but have it be started by systemd, and then wait for it to exit. And systemd knows how to set up the environment from, if I'm running it as the user, it knows that that user should have access to the display. So we will do this. I hope this would work, and when I tested it yesterday, it did. So I'm going to hit the same thing again. I'm going to say run on remote Linux system, and we're going to get the same export flow. So it's a little slow. It has to do loads of compression and export loads of scene files, compress some assets. So it's not instant. It's nowhere near as fast as running it on my local system. But we're uploading the archive to the Steam Deck, and with luck, the Steam Deck, if we cut over to it, we can see.
Hey, look at that!
Yeah, has launched.
Cool.
So, and you can see the output from the game here on my desktop, which maybe you can't see now. But anyway, yes, the game is now running, and I can play the game with the Steam Deck.
Cool.
And I can pick up the game where I left off. So I was in the Musician's Quest, and I can go to talk to this individual.
The auto brightness on that, it keeps blasting the brightness way high. It's funny. It's like way overexposed.
Oh yeah, so it is. Wow. Oh yeah, and you can't use the shortcuts on this. Okay.
Because you're in desktop mode. That's okay. That's fine.
I'm going to use the button on my desktop to kill. Sorry, I'm going to stop the game from running on the remote system.
Okay.
Now I can change the
just closes.
brightness to be less obnoxious. All right. So, one of the things that's annoying about this is that all these settings are specific to my Steam Deck because, well, one of them is. The IP address for the deck is just what it happens to have on my local network. But annoyingly, these are settings that get saved in the game project. So if I go and look at what Git says has changed, I've changed this config file, which is actually part of the game, which is pretty annoying because it means I can't leave this set up in such a way that it will not be broken for someone else. So if two different people want to use this flow, we'll both have to configure it manually each time. But, you know, we'll figure something out. Maybe there's a workaround. And at some point, I may send this change upstream to Godot, or maybe this bit is actually reasonable to deploy, because I don't think anyone in the team is going to be remotely running Threadbare on any device, on any Linux device that doesn't use systemd. So I think that can probably be committed.
Right.
Anyway, so we have this working. So now that we have that working, I now have a button I can mash in the editor, which can run it on a remote system. And as an aside, you can do the same thing for the web browser too, which can be pretty nice. So if I press Shift F5, it will run. It will export the game for the web, and then it will open the game in a web browser.
Oh, nice.
And what's cool about this, which it is possible to make this work over the remote deploy to Steam Deck as well, but I haven't figured it out yet, is that I'm going to just put this to one side and leave the game running. If I go back into Godot, in the scene menu, you can choose the remote tab. And so I can remotely debug the game in a web browser. So this is super useful. It will work, promise me. There you go. So I can look at the nodes that are in the tree, and I can, if I feel so inclined, I can go to the title screen, and I can set a breakpoint. I can say, where is it? On start press. I'll put a breakpoint here. I'll go back to the game, and I'll hit start. Okay, it didn't work. Well, you should never test things live. But I have found this very useful for testing bugs that only happen in the web export and don't happen in the desktop.
Yeah, that's nice. Anyway, I didn't know you could do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a very useful feature. The debugger sometimes works. It doesn't always work, evidently. But I have had it work before. Anyway, okay, so we have now done this. So now maybe we can actually start looking at what does it take to make the game actually look good on the Steam Deck. And so the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to go into the project settings in Godot, and I'm going to find, I can never remember where it is. So at this point we're going totally off script. I have a vague plan for what we're going to do, but I haven't really thought this through. So let's see. So let's see if I can say resolution. Is it going to be there? No. Where do you choose the viewport size? Display. There we go. Rendering viewport. I think it'll be in there. Apparently not. Is it in window? Somewhere.
There's window size as viewport. Yeah, of course it's not under viewport, but it's under window.
Yeah, and it's called viewport.
It's called viewport.
So, what these settings are is this is telling you what is the initial size of the game. What's the default size of the game. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this to 1280 by 960. No, I don't mean that. I mean 720p. So that's a little smaller than the Steam Deck, but that's kind of more standard resolution. The Steam Deck is weirdly a little higher.
Well, and so you were saying before, I think, that it was that's like the Nintendo Switch is 720p. A lot of smartphones are at least 720p, and so like that seems like maybe it's actually a good resolution to target, especially for a pixel art type game.
Yeah, I think it might be. I mean, this is actually quite a complicated topic because Threadbare is sort of a pixel art aesthetic game rather than a pixel art game.
Yeah,
true pixel art games, you normally render at a really, really low resolution, much lower than 720p. And then you upscale them pixel perfectly. And you can find some very small resolutions which are suitable for doing that in.
Yeah.
But in Threadbare, we're not actually that strict about it. So, for example, if I go to Ink Combat Round 3, which is one of the rounds of our lore quest, well, actually, let's go to round 1. In round 1, we have a camera which is set to a zoom factor of 2. So we're actually already zooming the whole game in 200%. But it's not constant. So in this one, which is a slightly bigger scene, when I go and find the camera, the zoom factor is 1.6. So in this case, we are zooming the game in. So you can kind of see the rectangles here, maybe just about in the stream. There's a purple rectangle here, and this is the viewport. And now, have I got this back to front? One of these is the viewport, and one of them is the camera. I never remember which one. Actually, I don't know what the pink one is. Oh no, the pink one, of course, it's now changed. The pink one is the viewport. I've just changed the viewport. One of these is the camera, and one of them is the viewport. So now the purple one is the viewport, and now the camera is zooming in further. So if I now play one of these rounds, let's do in combat round 1. So previously, these levels are all set so that the whole level is visible in the game and nothing else. But now they've changed the game resolution. Well, the game is smaller. Oh, this is not great, right? Because now the game is unplayable.
Because it's the window size, like, yeah, you change the window size, but like the game running behind it, I don't really know how to describe it, but is still at the larger size. Is that what's going on?
Not quite. No, not quite.
Okay.
What's happened is that we've changed the window size, and this level is set to zoom in to a certain number, and we chose the number so that the whole level fits in precisely at 1920 by 1080.
Okay.
And now we have changed the game resolution, and so zooming in is now pretty bad.
Yeah,
I did some math, some paper beforehand, and I happen to know that if I set this to 4:6.
Or my face was in the way there. I'm hiding my face.
No, not 4/6. I mean 4/3. So a fun fact about Godot is that you can do simple maths in the inspector.
I love
so
when
I want to set this.
When editors do that. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, so I want to set it to 1.333333 recurring, because that is the ratio that I have calculated previously in the zoom factor. So now, if I play this level, it looks correct.
Yeah, it's framed correctly. Nice.
The downside has been that like this thing, which was at a fixed size in the viewport, is now really, really big. And these assets now look kind of comically large, right?
In case you can't see the mouse cursor, like I can see the cursor on the stream, but it's just really small. So just you're saying the UI for like the buttons is really big, right?
Yeah,
or the
thing
input hints.
To space out the hint is really big, and the two bits of the two kind of scroll things, the thing on the right which shows how many threads of memory, imagination, and spirit are collected, and the text is way bigger.
It's taking up a much higher percentage of the screen because it's the same number of pixels. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's a pixel font at a fixed size, but the game works, right? This is working pretty nicely. I can do this. So then the question is, I'm going to go to phrase end, and I'm going to change the cam, which is the home, the kind of what the world map's scene. And I'm going to make the same change as the camera there. 4/3.0.
Okay, I have a random question that I just have always wondered and never looked into. That is totally off topic, but as long as I'm seeing it here, what are the like polygons at the bottom that are like shooting out?
Oh, great question. these things here.
Yeah.
And at the top of the map, we have this too. And if I go to the music puzzle, oh no, that's the music player. The music puzzle has something similar.
Yeah.
What on earth is that? Well, I'm just going to change the camera before I forget, because I think this is the level I was playing. 4.0/3. There we go. This is a huge collision shape. So we want the way that we are blocking the player from walking off the screen is as a forest. I'll show you.
Sorry to totally sidetrack for a minute, but I literally just have seen those and just.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to just disable this collision polygon. I'm going to run this level. So the trees, and so this should look fine. Yeah, this looks right. I fixed the scale factor. This looks exactly as it should look.
Yeah.
The trees are here, and the trees are blocking my motion.
Because they have their own collision shapes, like around the base of the tree.
So if I run the game with visible collision shapes, then you'll be able to see them. I think you'll also see the huge shape I just disabled. But you can kind of see it behind the house.
Yeah.
Shape. And we should change the color of this one here. You can see at the bottom of the tree. The tree just in a circle. But you can still, if the trees aren't dense enough, you might be able to walk through them and escape. And similarly, because I've disabled the huge collision shape, I can just walk off the world. And then I'll override the camera, so you can see. I'm somewhere down here, right?
Yeah, right.
Just zoomed out. And so now I can kind of roam freely around. Oops.
Okay. Cool. I had seen those, and I had no idea that there's just a giant collision shape to keep you in bounds. That's awesome.
Exactly. And there's a cool feature I can show in a different stream about. You can actually see the hidden object. Like this is where the object that you collect when you win this level.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Yes, that's what they're for. It's so that you can't probably sneak through the trees if I tried hard enough. There we go. Now I've snuck through the trees because I've disabled that polygon and I've escaped from the top of the level.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool, yeah.
Cool.
We have a cool feature which I won't show right now, which uses these areas to make a forest. Maybe I can show this now, if that's interesting. No, let's get back to the Steam Deck. We're here for one reason, and the reason I'm now going to switch back to the Steam Deck, which has gone to sleep. So we've now made some changes, which makes the game render at roughly the resolution of the Steam Deck. So perhaps the text will now be more legible. So now I'm going to run on a remote Linux system, and some stuff will occur, and we'll see what happens. The Steam Deck is sitting there doing its thing. The game is exporting.
Yeah, because it's doing a whole re-export, and then the long process is actually copying it over the network.
Yeah, exactly. The re-export will take some. The screen is resolution. Here we're already finding the bugs.
Yep.
The title screen is a fixed size, and so we have to fix. And this screen similarly is a bit off screen. But if I go continue, then I think we'll get to the musician's puzzle. So here we go. This looks kind of the same, but if I go and talk to the musician, you can't really see it on the screen, but the text looks much better. The text is now
a lot more legible.
Yeah, it's not being upscaled at all. And now on the screen, you might even just about be able to read it on the screen.
Another wanderer. Welcome to the Song Sanctuary, or what's left of it. I can read it.
There you go.
My preview anyway.
So you can read it. So, I mean, we have some design work to do here, right? Because at this point, most of the level is being obscured by the text. But I actually think we could probably get away with a smaller font size. We'd have to go and look at the interface guidelines for Steam Deck, because Valve has a wow, the volume is really high. Let me just turn the sound effect volume down a bit. Valve has requirements for the minimum text size,
like accessibility and the does that power the good, what do they call it, the
Steam Deck verified.
Steam Deck verified,
exactly. Yeah, if your game has text that's too small, so for example, I've been playing Blueprints on my Steam Deck, and it's a Windows game, and it works perfectly on the Steam Deck through the emulation layer, but it's only listed as playable rather than verified. The reason is not one of performance, although sometimes it dips below 60 frames per second. The reason is the text is absolutely tiny.
Yeah.
And so I have eyesight that's good enough to mostly read the text most of the time, which is not really saying that much, but it's really, really small. And it's hard to see how they could easily redesign the game to be legible on such a small screen. So I guess they haven't bothered, because you can do so.
It's like, well, but you can play it, you can dock it and play it on a bigger screen or whatever, but it's not going to be like the best experience playing handheld.
Yeah, exactly. So here we go. So now if all this text, that is a bit small actually, that text there is a bit small, but the dialogue is completely legible.
Yeah.
And so now I can go ahead and complete the puzzle, which I have done so many times.
Wow, yeah.
Do it in my sleep, and I will collect the thread of memory. And the story weaver tells us, Inkwell, here we come. So again, I've left the visible collision shapes in.
This is gonna be chaotic.
Yeah. But the remote debug is actually working.
Oh, so on your screen, I'm gonna switch over to your screen then.
I think so.
So you can.
I think yeah. Let me see what I can do. If I go to the, where is it? Where's the dialog balloon? Here's the dialog balloon. So I've got the remote debugger open. I think it's talking to the Steam Deck.
Let's see.
I think, which is pretty cool. I didn't know this worked. Character panel. Okay, so here we go. Character panel. And that contains the label. And the label says musician. I'm going to change the musician here to Archibald.
Oh yeah, and it's live updating on the Steam Deck.
And it's live.
That is really cool. That is wild. I did not know that was possible. That's really cool.
Yeah, so for example, so I can now, if I've noticed a bug in the game, well, actually, let's use this. I'm going to keep going through the challenge. This one, So now again, this overlay at the top corner is too big and doesn't fit on this corner. So we'd have to figure out how we deal with that.
Yeah.
Scaling. But I think when we get to the next level, we're going to have the camera scaling is going to be wrong.
I like that you've also found the exploits for like speedrunning. You're like,
by the way,
yeah.
If anyone wants to get an easy bug fix, it's filed in our issue tracker. You can walk onto this cliff, and you shouldn't be able to.
Oh, interesting.
And you can see collision shapes. Why not? There's nothing to collide with here. So if anyone wants a 5-click fix, then that would be a great thing to look at. So I'll walk up here and be teleported to the next level. Oh no! So the camera is totally wrong, right? You can't see anything. Well, that's in the debugger on my laptop, which you don't necessarily have to switch to. I'm going to go and find the camera scale factor and change it to 4.0/3. And on the Steam Deck, the game has live updated.
That's awesome.
That's interesting. Why is there a collision shape on the water on some but not all of the water? That's very interesting.
Somebody missed something?
Yeah, interesting.
Playing with collision shapes is funny because like I occasionally see you all on the games team like doing that, or like I've seen in Godot tutorials and stuff, but I always forget that that's a thing, and like it seems like it's so obvious that it would be so helpful for debugging stuff.
Yeah, it's good, right? Okay, this level I thought I fixed this one. Anyway, we get the idea. I think we get the idea at this point.
That's cool. The live updating, that is super cool, and that's really nice for.
Oh. And the game has crashed. If you switch back to the desktop, because the screen was shaking, while there's a thing which makes the screen shake when you're hit by an ink blob.
Yeah.
And it does this by wiggling the camera around. But the camera has been freed because the scene was freed while the shaker was still going. That's very interesting. So it's saying left operand of is a previously freed instance. That's fun. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, found a bug.
Sure, we had the shaker crash. What other bugs did we find today? Fixed size splash. Fixed size title. Oh, maybe I can find a bug about this. Let's go and do that. Let's get my issues.
Yeah, this is good. Good live demo of how to file a good bug report, right?
Yes. So to file a bug against Threadbare, all you simply do is go to the Threadbare repository. Click the Issues tab. You have to have a GitHub account, of course. I'll hit New Issue. I'm going to choose Bug, which is an unexpected problem or behavior. Title: Crash when quitting ink combat during a camera shake. So I'll say, while playing one of the ink combat levels, I paused midway. I was hit by an ink blob, and while the camera was still shaking, paused the game. From the pause menu, I tried to exit. Quit. Title. At this point, the game debugger game crashed. The debugger left me at this line in shaker PD. Extract. New tabs. I'm gonna just do this. And let's just say I've cut out some lines. And bear in mind that no one needs to write bugs in quite this much detail, but this is kind of a really useful level of detail.
It is nice. It is
Error,
nice if you can. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Like if you don't have the game open in the editor and the debugger is there, then there's no need, no need to try and reproduce it there. But if you can, it's very, very helpful, because that will be the first thing that someone does in trying to fix it. And I'll say here the error, and so I think you can copy this. Oh, I've crashed the editor again.
Oh no.
Yeah, there's a tooltip open.
Maybe note that, and we'll file it against Godot later.
Yes, indeed.
Or go see if it's already been filed.
Godot crash on open tooltip. Yes, and I'm going to say here, error is left operand of is a previously freed instance. Andrea, the thing is that I'm even worse at typing when people are watching than I am when people are watching. So
good eye on the chat there. I have the chat up, but I haven't been looking at it frequently. But yeah.
I think what's happening is that the camera is freed, but the screen shake, the shaker is part of a global background scene. So, is not freeze at that point. So I guess we should be, I can't scroll on that. As a result, if the shake is still ongoing, then it refers to the camera when the scene changes to the title main menu. That was just free. There we go. A required checkbox is missing. Ah, yes. Now I have previously reviewed the code of conduct, so I do indeed agree to follow it. It's a bug, and are there any other tasks we might, tags we might want here? No. I'll create it, and here's my nice bug. And in a moment, some automation will add it to the Threadbare development board. Now, it's going to go into the untriaged column. So you can see the tooltip from Godot is happily floating above everything else. Anyway, this is a confirmed bug. It happens, so I'm going to put it in here. I don't think it's super high priority, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But we aren't really rigorously prioritizing things. But science. I'm not sure how to fix it. I'll leave it for now. I'll leave the prioritization. But there we go. And now my Godot has crashed, which is just great. Okay. Yeah, and the thing is that the game continues, because Godot tries to continue after you hit like unquote exceptions or the equivalent thereof. So we're back on the scene that the game is running still. But, there we go. I think we're pretty much at time.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was kind of cool. What I did not get to looking at is maybe we can look for 15 seconds. Is that you might imagine that we now have to figure out what happens if you run the game on a bigger screen again. Do we still want to scale everything up linearly, or do you want to scale? Godot has different modes for. Do you just scale the whole game up, or do you expand the visible area, or do you do different things for different layers?
Yeah.
So, the question of what to do there.
To me, it makes a lot more sense to just scale up, because otherwise you're going to end up with weird things where like you don't know how big of a screen the person's running it on. Like somebody gets on ultra wide and it's just like they're just seeing like gray off on the side or whatever.
I think that's probably right. Of course, right now because we're doing a linear scale up. If you've got an ultra wide, it's going to be pillar box to the sides.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Specifically on the Steam Deck, it may have not been quite obvious but I set it to 720p, which is not the Steam Deck resolution, which was in here.
So it just had a little black bars on the bottom, top and bottom?
Yeah, which is okay.
Yeah, okay.
Fine. But there are various settings you can change somewhere in here.
It's fascinating to me that they did not go with a 16:9 aspect ratio on Steam Deck.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why not. I mean, one assumes that that's the panel that was available.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know. That would be very interesting to know. Now, where is the scaling settings? Anyway, there is. Oh, I think it's in the 2D rendering settings somewhere. No? Oh yeah, here we go. So we have this snap 2D transforms to pixel 2D. No, that's not the one I'm looking at. Somewhere else, there's a thing which controls how the scaling is done.
Yeah, whether it's like whether there's, what is it called? Not aliasing, but interpolation.
Yeah, there's loads of settings that I don't fully understand all the implications of. So it's there's more work to do here. Cool.
Interesting. Well, thanks for going through Threadbare on Steam Deck. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
It was. I learned a lot of little things about Godot that I didn't know, and I'm definitely gonna be like, I could even see just testing on a laptop, like on another computer. It's just nice to be able to remote deploy it onto that thing, and then you have your your workstation or whatever, but then you're testing it on a lower powered laptop or whatever. Like that's kind of handy.
That's a great point. When our colleague Manuel travels, he often takes a lower powered laptop with him, which is actually quite useful because we want this game to run on relatively low end hardware. We don't want to have a very high hardware baseline to play the game because that will limit both who can play it, but worse, who can contribute to it.
Right.
So I'm running it on a 6-year-old laptop and it runs just fine. But you could well imagine having an even less powerful laptop alongside it, as you say, and then this is an easy way to just mash a button and see if the new particle effect you've added still looks okay. So if I ever get a more powerful laptop, then I might end up using this one as my low-end device to do performance testing on.
Yeah, makes sense. If there was somewhere we should direct people to go, I mean, I have obviously the GitHub repo and the Discord. Anywhere else or any other things that we want to ask people to do or go do?
Yeah,
wow, that was terribly phrased, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think if you have a Steam Deck, it'll be interesting to see if you can follow the steps I just described and get it working. Although, as you will discover, it's quite hard to play right now. So maybe in a future release we can recommend that. Yeah, I would suggest come and join us on Discord. There's a link on the GitHub.
In the GitHub README. Yep. I also got a link on the screen, and there will be one in the description as well.
Yeah, if we go back to the project here, it's down here.
Yeah.
Here we go. We also have a discussion forum right here on GitHub. So you can play it in your browser if you don't have a Steam Deck. And we have a playtest feedback section on our discussion board. So if you're interested in playing and giving feedback, that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, good shout there.
If you're inspired to, for example, fix the collision problem on one of those levels, we have a label, for the time being at least, good first issue, which might be an interesting filter to look at. And so, for example, on here we have a bug about this. There's a bug that you can walk up here. So if you're feeling inspired to figure out how to edit the tile map and place the correct cliff edge tile underneath this grass, this would be a great one to pick up.
Yeah. And Andrea in the chat did also say, file bugs. Yeah,
yes,
it's a good shout. Like it's definitely, that's if you find bugs, file them. And also if you're like Will said, if you're interested in helping out, it's completely open source. Anybody can contribute. We have those good first issues. There's also in the if you go back to the discussions board, if you're feeling really like, if you really want to contribute to I just realized our faces are not on the screen. That's fine. If you really want to contribute to the game itself, there is a more Threadbare section here. So this is basically like a learning program that we're actually running with partners, but also you can just go do it. You can access all of the learning materials and kind of follow this program to like contribute to the game, which is really cool. Or if you just have open source experience and want to contribute, especially if you're a Godot, if you have experience in the Godot engine and you want to contribute, come join us and we'll talk and we'll work together on this open source project. All right. thank you for joining, everybody. And hopefully this was helpful and fun. And thanks, Will. And I'll see you in the next stream.
See you again soon.
Thanks.